Hey folks, it's your buddy Mike Messier, continuing my series on going back to the Ultimate Fighting Championships, the early days. The most recent one I watched, it took me two viewings over 3 nights to watch Ultimate Fighting Championship 2, by the top of my head, memory, March 11th, 1994. Still in Denver, Colorado, in a smaller arena. I think it was called the Mammoth Arena. 2,000 people there. The first UFC apparently had about 7,000 people, November of '93, which I did review in the previous video. What did I think of this one? Well, it's very interesting. UFC goes to a 16-man tournament. The previous one was only 8. Now, I mean, you can see that this is a sport in progress, a promotion in progress, because they go to a 16-man tournament, but they don't air 7 of the 8 opening round matches on the pay-per-view, and they weren't available on the VHS. So they actually start the pay-per-view with Royce Gracie in the final of the 8 round of 16 matches. And they give you little clips and little highlights and references to those 7 matches you don't see, but essentially there's 7 dark matches that are part of this tournament. I'm sure they did that for time constraints, but why have 7 fights that only 2,000 people in the arena are going to watch? And they never release these fights in their entirety. I think from a historical perspective, I mean, I don't think anyone else really cares, maybe but me, and maybe people have cared over the years, but where are these 7 missing fights, these lost media, for all you lost media YouTube people? Where are these 7 fights? I want to see them. So yeah, I mean, the tournament begins. I think you can see that there's one fight in this thing. I'm getting all the names mixed up. But there's a big upset, I think, in the second round where this big dude, big young guy, uses his elbows to knock out a guy named Ernesto. It's not Ernesto Hoost. It's another Ernesto. And this is, I'm trying to remember if there was any fight in the first UFC where elbows really came into fruition. But it's interesting to see the different strikes, the different maneuvers, the different types of offense that people are doing, and these elbows really come into play. I guess Royce Gracie uses elbows to some extent, and really brutal little punches that he was good at. Royce Gracie, that is. Royce would actually go on to beat the guy I just described, I believe. Like I said, I'm getting the names kind of mixed up. Patrick Smith, who lost that fight to Ken Shamrock at the first one with the submission to the ankle lock. He's back. He looks very pissed off and ready to fight, and he gets all the way to the finals, but, you know, spoiler, he loses to Royce Gracie. The commentating, if you watched my first video, the commentating on UFC 1 was really bad. No offense, I think the guy's name was Bill Anderson, but just an experienced fighter, seems like a nice enough guy, but was just kind of not in his backyard as far as being a commentator. But this guy who takes over the lead commentary on the second one, he's very smooth, and he sounds a lot like Craig DeGeorge, for all you old-time WWF fans from the 80s and 90s. Craig DeGeorge was kind of like, him and Sean Mooney were kind of like the Michael Coles before the Michael Cole era, you know, and actually kind of a lot more likable. They had kind of that New York reporter look that Vince Jr. likes, the, you know, black-haired guy who dresses sharp and kind of middle of the road. But yeah, this guy is not Craig DeGeorge, but he sounds just like Craig DeGeorge. It's really kind of interesting. Jim Brown's back. He's kind of more reserved this time. There's another color commentator guy who's got a really cool, like, feathered haircut from the early 90s. I mean, this is 1994, so there's going to be some style differences from our era to theirs. But this guy's got a really cool haircut, and he's pretty good, too. John McCarthy, John McCarthy. Big John McCarthy is the referee for the first time. And why am I apologizing to you? I'm the one taking the time to make this video, by the way. But John McCarthy is there. You know, he's good. and he's just a legend. I think he referees like either this whole thing or most of it. Here was a fight. I think it's the semifinals where this young guy. It's either I think it's actually the quarterfinals. Hoist Gracie gets an armbar on a guy who actually taps standing right on Hoist's leg, and he's tapping like right on his leg, right on Hoist's race. But the referee doesn't stop the fight. That's Joe McCarthy, and then Hoist is able to drop the guy, and he basically explodes a capsule in his arm, according to the commentators. And no offense to John McCarthy, but he was really slow on the count. And I think there was some of that in the first UFC too, first UFC as well, not first UFC too, but as well. Just the referees were just kind of, like I said, it's a sport that's coming together. So there's just a learning curve for everybody because they're kind of making this stuff up as they go along. So if you had never had to be a referee and count a tap out before, wouldn't it be tough? And it was. So, I mean, you got to give John McCarthy a little bit of a break. At the same time, Hoist Gracie knew this guy was tapping out. He could have let the hold go, but he proceeded to fuck the guy's arm up. And the commentators didn't really acknowledge that. I mean, obviously the Gracie family were part of the team that brought this together, a vital part. So I don't know if they were actually funneling money into it or resources or whatever, or name value. But the commentators were not quick to, give Hoist a problem because he kept cranking the guy's arm to the point of basically popping the capsule after the guy was tapping, clearly. They also had ring card girls at this one. I don't remember if they had that at the first one, but there weren't really, they're octagon girls, but there weren't rounds in this thing. In this second one, there were no rounds, there were no judges. It feels like a sport that's kind of, like I said, it's starting to be something. And I think the improvements really were for the production on the second one. So I think I'll wrap it up. I did this video kind of quickly just because I want to get into UFC 3. So we're progressing into 1994. I'm going to light up the old Fight Pass app, trying to get the most out of this Fight Pass. You're here on One Pro Wrestling Fan. I might have to change the name of this channel again to One Pro Wrestling and Sports Fan, just because I do like other sports. I'm not a sports expert. I'm not Stephen A. Smith, okay, although we look alike. I'm just a guy making videos for my own enjoyment, maybe for your enjoyment, maybe not. As you know, I'm a well-published author. I write books, okay? Yes, I wrote this book. You should buy it. I do things, I paint. I'm a painter of sorts. I'm a painter. This is one of my minimalist works. And here's one that actually has something. Well, I won't show you that one right now. Here's something that I've done recently. Very exciting. So that's it. So, okay, folks, very good. Nice talking to you. Subscribe.